cold open question of the day. Brendon Kleen, happy Friday. How tall is Kevin Durant?
Depends on the day of the week, the year, what kind of mood he's in. I'm not the best judge, given that I am nowhere in the vicinity of any of these dudes' heights covering them, but I have been around him for a while now. I would say that he is a lot closer to 7 feet than the 6'9" that I think he dropped a hint at this week.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since we got Kevin Durant denying that he's a 7-footer, and now he's like, Anthony Davis is 6'9", Bam 6'8". I'm like, those guys' height. I'm like, Kevin, no, you're not. I think he's
just gaslighting us at this point. We can see him next to other players, and that is the best comparison point. Players who don't fudge their height or turn it into a joke, we know their height. They go stand next to him. He's taller than them. Therefore, he is taller than them. It's pretty obvious at a certain point. He's not 6'9". I'm fine with him saying also that he's not 7 feet tall, but like, why can't you be 6'11"? Like, just leave it there. He used to say 6'10" all the time. Now he's just messing with us.
You do shrink. You know, you can't shrink as you get older. I don't think Kevin Durant is shrunk
I don't
yet.
think 35 is the age when
saying.
that starts to happen. Yeah.
No, it's like in your 60s. You know.
Yeah.
And if he shrinks, he's still going to be 6'8". So I just Kevin Durant. Can we just like tell the truth about your height? You know, I would just like some transparency.
I've also always thought it's funny, these guys who are so afraid of the question. It's like, I mean, back in the day, like there was the thing with Bill Walton was one of the guys who didn't ever want to, admit it and everything else. But do we think of people who are 6'11" as like more physically normal or relatable than 7'1" or something? Like if I see somebody and I'm like personally know them or I whatever come across them and they tell me they're 6'11", I still say holy shit.
Yeah, as you should, because that's really fucking tall.
Like, where did this idea come in that, well, if I'm only 6'11", people will treat me normally, but if I'm 7 foot or 7'1" or 7'2", then I'm just going to be ostracized and alienated from society. I'm going to have to go live on an island somewhere. Like, no, dude, we know how tall you are. We welcome you anyway.
Well, like, did Kevin Durant, when he was like 19 and getting into the league, or like at Texas, did you think like Rick Barnes or Scott Brooks were going to be like, hey man, you're 7 feet, we're going to throw you on the block and you're going to play the 5? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, what's the point? I have lots of. It's a lot for us to answer. But on today's basketball show, we've got Lauri Markkanen trade discussion from the Jazz side, which we haven't really talked about. We're going to talk about the TV deal, which has come through and is going to change a little bit of how the way we watch basketball. And we're going to talk a little bit about USA-Canada, the scrimmage that happened as USA gets into Olympic mode. That's coming up today on the Just Basketball Show.
Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
What is up, everyone? Happy Friday. It is July 12th, and I am Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen, and this is the Just Basketball Show, your 3 times a week show covering all things hoops. That's NBA, trades, WNBA, betting stuff, anything you want in basketball. Olympics, we've got you covered here. A ton of Olympic content to come here on the men's and women's side. I cannot wait. If you haven't already, follow, rate, review on your podcast app platform of choice. Hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel. And check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and X. I want to tell you, too, that support for today's show of the Just Basketball Show comes from BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use a bonus code JustBasketball. You get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here is how that works. Step 1, you download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JustBasketball. Step 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. And step 3, you can receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. And if you have a gambling problem, you can call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Brendon, let's start with Lauri Markkanen, who is the big name, I think, in the scuttlebutt out in the trade market right now. Has not been traded yet, obviously, as of yet. And we've talked a lot about the teams that go get him, dating back even to the trade deadline. We talked about the Thunder. We've got into the Warriors. We've got into every team that could trade for him. But let's flip this on its head for a second. The Utah Jazz, in my mind, do not really have a reason to trade him unless they get blown away. And it begs this question to me too. What is the Jazz plan? And why wouldn't Markanen fit in? I've been asking myself this question of like why this guy at his age, his skill set, even with the massive extension probably coming, I can't really see a world, considering all the picks they already have on top of him being really good, why they should really even think about trading him. I don't really understand it.
Well, let's set the stage a bit more, because I think the other part of trading him or not trading him is this extension, right? And the reason that his name has bubbled up is not only just because he's on this kind of team that we're not sure the direction of, but also because on August 6th, he becomes eligible for a 4-year, $209 million extension that would pay him properly, right? Right now, he's way underpaid. I think he makes about $18 million this season, which makes him a little easier to trade, right?
This is the deal he signed leaving Chicago. Cavs sign and trade. The last year was partially non-guaranteed, which is how much his value has changed in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, and so then you go from that to what would kick in next year, which is again, $209 million contract, $52-ish million annually. That is a hell of a lot of money, and that is no longer some kind of developmental story, really, nice, interesting piece. No, now that is, like you said, a player that you are building around, that you are committing to, a player that becomes a little bit harder to trade for from a salary standpoint. Teams that are, way up in the stratosphere of the salary cap, maybe that gets a little tighter, on and on down the line. So that's all part of not only what these other teams are thinking through and why they're pursuing him now, but also what the Jazz have to consider. And I guess to answer your question of why the Jazz would not do this, or I don't think they should. So I think this is great. We disagree a little bit here. He's 27. This will be his age 27 season. And I think the past few seasons show you why not. Because he is not good enough. Him being your best player, even if they did, of course, kind of shut him down and tank the last month plus of each of the past 2 years. Let's just say they didn't do that. Let's call them like just shy of 500 if he's the best thing about your team. So unless you're going to get somebody better than him, which they haven't been able to do, then the other way to get a player in the future who is better than him is to tear down even more, use those assets, improve your own draft pick in the coming years where he's not making you a 35-win team, but instead you can just free fall to actually have a chance to win the lottery and get whatever back for him that allows you to add to your stockpile of draft picks, get another blue chip player like a Jonathan Kuminga in the door and see what he can be on down the line. I just think you're kind of holding this floor without a really high ceiling by keeping him around, considering for 2 years now they have not gotten that other player to be part of the co-pilot to him on the next great Jazz team. I just don't think it's going to work the way that they've been doing it. That's the case against it.
Yeah, I would agree with that in theory, right? I get that. I'm going to say two things about this. Where I think I disagree. Number one, I think there is value as you have Keontae George. You have, they've talked about trading Walker Kessler. That's been out there. They also have Kyle Filipowski now. Like, you look at this roster, I think like having a guy like Markanen, where he is not so good where he's going to drive so many wins for you that I think it changes what your team is and accelerates you in some crazy way. Like, this roster, if I'm trying to trade guys on this roster, it's like I want to try to trade Clarkson for whatever I can. I want to try to trade Colin Sexton for whatever I can. You're not going to get as much back, but like you already have all these Cavs picks, you have all these Wolves picks. You already have the picks to go be aggressive and do something on top of that. I also just think like if you think about where they are within the West, we've talked about this on the show, how the West next year is going to be a bloodbath. How the West next year is full of 13 teams that expect to be better. Yeah. And can be competitive. They're one of the teams that I think even if they just run this back next year, even if Markkanen's back and you have George and all this stuff, I don't think they're going to be so good that they're going to add to 31 wins. I think there's a world where they get worse next year and aren't even that much worse. Just the West just kind of hits them in a real way. And I think with where the lottery's at, I still think they're going to be in a really good position to get a high pick next year and maybe get that guy. Maybe they don't get one, but there's that draft class is considered to be very good. Even if they don't get Cooper Flagg, internet sensation Cooper Flagg, I think they're still going to be in a really good spot next year, kind of organically, without having to give up Markanen to do that. And I think Markanen, for what he is a good thing to have as you're having these young guys develop. You have some kind of structure there to make your team and their life a little more functional instead of just throwing them into the deep end. I just personally prefer that.
To me, he just is not really the type. He's a player that is much, much better on a good to great team than a bad team. And I don't really fully, of course, having a guy who has size, who can space the floor, who's unselfish, who doesn't need the ball. There's, it's not like he's a big harm to the way that they want to play and what they're building. And I would even say, Will Hardy seems to love the opportunity of just drawing stuff up for him, and he has helped Markanen get better. So there's all sorts of positives from it. But I just don't think he's the type of player that truly makes the guys around him significantly better. He makes a team better because he does winning things, but I think if on a young team, it's like I either want a point guard, a playmaker who's going to be able to set those young players up for easy shots and rhythm and good pace and limit their mistakes and everything else, or I want a defensive anchor, a center, somebody like a Rudy Gobert or a player like that can just kind of clean up the mistakes on that end of the floor, take away the paint, just make life easier from that front line to just say, hey, I got you. Markanen, even from a stat standpoint, when in the 1,800 minutes he was on the court last year, they had a plus 0.6 net rating. You know what I mean? This is not a player who is changing your life. So I've been fully on board with move him if you can for a while now. Like you said, we've been talking about him dating back to last season. The other thing too, like as far as their draft position, I hear you, right? Like, you don't have to get, Wes and I talked about like who should tank for Flagg in the episode the other day. And we kept harping on the fact that, hey, you don't actually need to have the worst record in the whole league by 5 games just to have a shot at the number 1 overall pick. Like tanking means something a little different with the flattened lottery odds and just in general nowadays. But we've seen what it looks like with them picking in the middle of the lottery. They're now 2 years into the teardown since they traded Gobert and Mitchell, and Markanen is probably still the most promising piece that they've gotten. That's not a good thing. I mean, congrats for picking up Markanen and turning him into something that people didn't think he could become, but you should have gotten a better player after 2 full years of a teardown. Like, a lot of the other teams around the league that have been rebuilding for 2 years have a better franchise piece even than Markanen, let alone an actual young player to build around, longer term.
I hear you. I think if this was any other team, like the picks thing and all that stuff too, I think I would be more open to. I think I would. I hear everything you're saying about how he maybe doesn't make everyone else around him better. I think that's true. It's not really his skill set, right? Like that's not what he is. I think if this was like the Pistons and they just like were in the same spot and they didn't have all these picks, I would feel like, okay, don't pay the contract, punt this down a little bit, you have leeway. The Jazz already just kind of have the leeway to build this and figure out how to fit him into it and then hit the gas a little bit faster if this clicks into place. That's also the thing that tempts me with this, is that I think if you could figure this out, get the right blue chip guy, have still some flexibility in other ways, you could really hit the gas on this quickly and turn this around in a way that doesn't take 5 years. It could take 2 years. And I think that also like is in the back of my head saying, okay, am I punting on something to maximize what he is, which I think we're in agreement on, instead of like giving him up now for things. And like Kuminga, like if it's Kuminga and stuff, that's fine. I like Kuminga. I think I would rather just like keep Markanen and then wait 2 years and see if you could get there. And like maybe that's a mistake. Maybe like his trade value plummets the moment he signs that extension, and maybe some of what he is and how good he's been has been somewhat of an aberration because it is so out of line with the rest of his career. I don't really think that. But if you also maybe think you're selling high, like I could understand that as well. But I would just be tempted to say, okay, I know he's not or maybe a number 1 guy. I know he doesn't fit the way that really makes everything better. Maybe he's denying some of our guys reps. Maybe he's denying Keontae George more time where we're drawing stuff for him or whatever it is. But 2 years from now, I think this team could just be ready to hit the gas again, and I would want Markanen there when I'm ready to do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the other thing about their picks, it's somewhat similar to these other teams who have gone this route in the past, where once push comes to shove and they start deferring, or they start getting to you, 2025, they have Cleveland and Minnesota unprotected. Those are both going to be picks in the 20s for all we know right now, right? They have a 2027 Lakers pick protected 1 through 4. In theory, that LeBron's probably gone and it's AD and whatever else, and maybe they're on another coach after JJ Redick by then and everything, but maybe not. Anthony Davis is very good, and the Lakers don't usually try to be terrible. It's just, what's the pathway with those next couple years for that happening? Because you look at their roster, and right now I agree, by the way, on the point of Sexton maybe a little less so because he's even younger than Markanen and he's making a reasonable salary too. But
I still like Hold Collins. He's in my portfolio of guys I still think are pretty good and just have had like weird careers because they're not like great, but he's good. I think that's a good NBA player.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, since he got to Utah, I think he's kind of proven that once and for all that he's going to be around, and he's only 26 and paid like a good bench player, which he might even be a starter, in his prime. So that's a fine contract to keep around. But Clarkson at 32, making $14 million. I still don't really understand why they took the flyer on Collins, kind of disrupted their own chemistry. They keep doing weird stuff like giving Drew Eubanks $5 million for some reason here. They're kind of shopping Walker Kessler. But the point is, Keontae George, late lottery pick. We feel decently about it, but his efficiency was awful. Kessler somehow on the wrong side of management all of a sudden. Taylor Hendricks barely played last year. Cody Williams, number 10 overall pick. We'll see. I think it would be a pretty big leap to say that they have a vision right now for what getting to another great Jazz team, how that's going to happen. And I think they can fast track that by getting stuff back from Markanen. I mean, Steph Curry is in his mid-30s as well. You give me a Warriors pick in 2029 unprotected or something, and Curry's 38 or 2031 unprotected or even a little bit protected. Even if Kuminga doesn't work out, that would become one of their better assets because they did those trades with Gobert and Mitchell a couple years back now. Those picks only go out to 2029. They don't have those super future picks like the Spurs have or some of these other teams have. So, just some interesting things to think about. But they're going into year 3 of being right in the middle with very little to show for it. And even if Markkanen's a nice player, we've seen what that gets you. Again, 35, 38 wins at best. That's what is that? What is that doing?
I think what also, Brendan, makes it hard for me to know, if I'm trying to figure out what they're thinking, they are one of the organizations now in this Danny Ainge era where I don't always feel like I understand what they're thinking. I don't feel like we know exactly what their plan is, what they want to do. I think their philosophy now seems really like, okay, if we have Will Hardy, who's a really good coach and really good at player development, that's kind of an extension of what they did before. If you remember, the 2 cornerstones of their last great team were not high. Gobert was a later pick, and Donovan Mitchell was back in the lottery. Those are guys that they developed. Gordon Hayward was a guy they developed as well, even before that. That's kind of what they do, but this is a different regime. We don't exactly know, I think, what Danny Ainge's plan is here, really. And Justin Zanuck as well. I think we're still figuring out their vision, and this is maybe the first data point in, I think, figuring out what their kind of method is here. Because Mark Stein has written in his newsletter on Substack that there's a, quote, rising belief, end quote, that the Jazz would like to extend Markkanen first before doing anything. If they extend him, you can't really trade him. Depending on the timing. They kind of lock.
If they do it the day they can on August 6th, then they'll have one day to be able to trade him, which would be the deadline day of next year.
Yeah. Which
is the funny kind of wrinkle in all this. I mean, with Ainge, he wants to do everything at once, right? He wants to have his cake and eat it too. They've apparently been, on the periphery of the sweepstakes for Mikal Bridges, for Drew Holiday, for Damian Lillard. while also thinking of trading Lauri Markkanen away and fully tearing down. So
and trading Kessler, who's like a good, solid NBA player who had a really good rookie year and maybe a little bit worse last year, but a guy that like I think will have a good, productive NBA career for a long time.
he's something. I don't know if we're for sure that he's like some kind of good starter. So maybe, for all we know, maybe they are right to trade him, and they know him better than anyone, and he had a weird World Cup. So, I think he's a good buy low opportunity, but it just kind of speaks to the opportunistic nature of all of it, right? They want to be nimble. Ainge wants to buy and sell, tear down and stock up. Like the answer of what they're doing is yes all the time. You know what I mean? But doesn't it kind of surprise you that they get a new owner and it's the exact opposite of what most new owners do, which is they always go fully in one direction, right? We're going to, renovate the stadium and get people excited about the young players we have and start the new era of what Jazz basketball will be. Or, I'm Matt Ishbia in Phoenix. I'm going to make a trade for a Hall of Famer the first day I'm the owner, and then I'm going to get Bradley Beal, and I'm going to hire and fire coaches all the time, and we're going to be more all in than anybody in the history of the league, and this and that. Ryan Smith, the new owner there, has just been like, do your thing, Danny. Like, whatever, I'm good.
To your point, like his move was extend Jordan Clarkson because he was like buddy with Jordan Clarkson. It felt like, and hired Danny Ainge. Like those were the things he did.
I don't exactly get the impression that he's made his mark in the business world of that team in any significant way. Like I'm sure the fan base is kind of on edge with all this, and the team is, just like we've been saying, kind of in a lurch here. And what are you doing? Like, it's all very strange. And I think maybe if nothing else, getting rid of Markkanen at least it's kind of what we, speaking of another new owner and everything, like it's kind of what the Nets had to face down this summer, right? They're like, well, we're not getting somebody next to Bridges. We could potentially, we're going to have to start talking about a contract with him, and Ben Simmons comes off the books, and are we going to try to be great again, or maybe let's just be pretty bad for a year or two and give ourselves some time? And they went that direction with it, and that sometimes is just like, it's better to do something and go a direction than just hope something falls into your lap, which is kind of what it feels like Danny Ainge is doing. Oh, maybe we'll get a Drew Holiday someday. Like, even if you do, great. I don't know.
Let's end this part of this on this, Brendan. Tell me, you're I think clearly more pro trade Markkanen than I am. I'm I think more anti. I fall probably like 85-15, 80-20, somewhere in there where I kind of fall. Mm-hmm. What's the best is the Warriors package, and betting on like Curry getting old and the Warriors plummeting after that? Is that the best deal to you on the market? If you could think about what we've heard of who is interested.
Well, who is interested at this point? I think is a question, right?
Yeah, I feel like just the Warriors. Maybe it's like kind of the one concrete one.
Yeah, like the Kings we thought, but now they don't. They have Herter, and they could add a young player. And again, the contract situation with Markkanen makes him a pretty easy guy to add up salary for. But the Warriors package is good enough. Like I said, if they really kind of go big on the pick side. If the Kings were still interested, that probably, interests me less because they gave up that 2031 swap with Barnes, and they don't really want to trade Keegan Murray. I don't really feel like Sacramento would be interested, but their offer's probably also worse, which those things might be connected. Yeah, I would take the Warriors offer if that's kind of what we're talking about here. I would feel comfortable with it. Even if it didn't include Kuminga. Even if it was like Moody, Pajemski, and whatever. And four unprotected picks or something. I would do it if I'm Utah.
The other team that I've wondered would be Houston. But even then, it's like you're getting like a hodgepodge of young guys, and then it's like how many of those young guys are you really feeling that much better about than the young guys and picks you already have? Is that my thought process with that?
Yeah, like is Jabari Smith or Jalen Green, do they make you feel how much better do they make Utah's core, right?
You know the call.
They
you know
do,
the-
but how
yeah.
much?
I think Houston probably hangs up on you. You know, but I'd be like, so how available is Alperen Sengun? I would just be like, can we do a market? Like, I'd just be asking. That'd be the one. I'd be like, can I get Sengun and matching salary for marketing? I'd want to do that. That would really be the needle mover for me, I think.
Yeah.
Curious to see if this happens. It feels maybe this is all leverage for them, kind of saying they might the leaks about them. Who knows? But who knows?
Well, and again, like,
I don't think we ever know.
If they do the extension day one, they still could trade him at the deadline. So we could be having this conversation all over again in 6 months.
Because he probably will be the biggest, most interesting player that we think about at the deadline. If we're kind of like, it just feels like that's where that might be headed. So, who knows? All right, let's go on to the TV deal. Brendon, you wrote about this at Alpha Announcing, so I'm going to turn this over to you. Explain to me and the listeners, like we're second graders, whatever the base literacy level is here, what this TV deal is, some of what we should know about it.
Well, it goes into effect the season after next, so the 2025-2026 season, but they had to negotiate all of it now because, as expected, there were some new bidders. NBC and Amazon Prime Video will air games, so now they need a year to staff up. Meanwhile, all of us have heard about this ad nauseum. TNT's most likely going to be out of the picture here, so that's why the Charles Barkley retirement, which people still are, questioning, but has been in the news. The end of Inside the NBA. Ernie Johnson reportedly wants to stick around at TNT. What's the future for all those dudes, and are they available to go to these other networks, and that whole musical chairs. But what we have now that it's all set is an 11-year, $76 billion deal, which is just insane. Remember, it was going to be that they were going to triple, and then it was a joke that they could ever possibly triple, and now we are back here again from the deal in 2016. It is actually, again, looking like it's going to be triple, that 2016 deal. So they're making a huge amount of money. And from a fan standpoint, we're going to see games national. We were talking about this in our text thread. We can debate if it's really national, but a basketball game, an NBA game broadcast with a national broadcast team on a service that's available to everybody that is not Bally's whatever every single day of the week. NBC on Monday, Peacock Tuesday, ESPN keeping its normal Wednesdays. Fridays split between ESPN and Prime Video, depending on the football schedule. Saturday and Sunday on ESPN or ABC, and then a little bit of maybe some Saturday in there from Prime Video as well. So ESPN keeps the biggest package with the finals, NBC right below that, Amazon coming in with kind of the C package, paying the least amount of money, and more basketball available to more people. Is that the top line, Chris? I mean, I think this is a good thing, but maybe other people not so much. I mean, I don't have cable, so I'm looking at this like, well, I'll keep stealing cable from my in-laws, and then the streaming stuff. Great, now it's just going to be on a platform I already have. Win-win.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we will get the normal expected round of griping about people not knowing where to go, and it being like, I have to have Prime, I have to have all these other streaming services, which is like a valid thing. Brendon, as a person who thinks Peacock is perhaps the most underrated service out there, I'm very excited to, instead of, what was it, Bones was the longtime TNT lead-in, I'm just going to lead in an episode of Columbo into whatever Tuesday night NBA game we're going to get. And I'm going to have a great time.
Little Office, Friends, whatever you're into.
Parks and Rec. Sure. Really bad horror movie Night Swim is on Peacock as well. You could Carrie Condon and Wyatt Russell just cooking with the demonized pool, and you go right into NBA. It's all there for you. I think that is the thing that people are going to come up against, is just the fact that it is more services. I think this is just always probably where this was headed, though, and I think the stuff that we know people care about more, the NBA Finals, the conference finals, those are going to be on linear television. Now, the conference finals thing, I think alternating years, Prime Video and NBC. I guess will conference finals be on NBC? I guess is the question that I was that. Is that how I read it? Is that, or is that a Peacock? Will it be a Peacock thing?
Yeah, I think the alternating conference finals are that's probably going to be when the loudest complaints come in, right? Is the year, whatever the first time, which I would imagine ESPN will just keep the East because that's what they've always had. Maybe they bid for the West this time aroround because they were like, hey, it's kind of better.
They are paying the most money, so like I feel like if we get to like, I know it's like by like $0.1 million per year.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying isn't it per year? Or is it 2.6 billion a year?
You caught a typo in my awful announcing article here. Yeah,
tough.
That's billion.
Tough.
That's billion annually.
But
yeah.
it's whatever 0.1 of a billion is. I went to school for journalism and English. I don't do numbers.
100 million.
Like $100 million. Like that $100 million probably means I would ask for the West. You know, I'd be like, can I have LeBron and Curry and the Suns and Jokic, and Anthony Edwards?
I don't think we're getting LeBron or Curry in the conference finals during the duration.
I'm just saying,
like,
I'm just
prediction
saying
on that.
Okay, I'm just saying, if I'm like picking the list from the list of players,
how about like Victor Wembanyama? You know,
right?
Give me
right.
That
but
guy.
I'm saying, I'm just like thinking about the list of guys in both conferences, and it's like the stars in the West is just it's bigger than the East. It's like
absolutely,
you know. Yeah, so that's.
But whenever we finally get a Prime Video conference finals, people are going to be upset. But I guess to me, like the thing that I like about the way that the NBA handled this too is they didn't get too cute about it. They went with streamers that already have sports, right? Like if you care about Sunday Night Football or the English Premier League, you already have Peacock. If you care about Thursday Night Football or some of these other things, you already have Prime Video. They didn't go to Apple like MLS did. They didn't go to Netflix and try to reinvent the wheel and be the first league to do like a really big package with Netflix. And a lot of people have Netflix, but still, not everyone does. They said, hey, sports fans already are here. I mean, with Prime Video, you can also get like a box of, like cleaning utensils sent to your house for free on top of, getting the NBA. So like that's already there. And let's just kind of slide our product in with that. So I don't know. I think people will just get used to it. I think they'll realize, from a pay standpoint, what are we talking about? It's like cable is whatever amount, $100-something a month if you have that, or if you have like a smaller package like YouTube or Hulu or whatever, maybe half that, but still pretty expensive. If you pay for Peacock, Prime Video, and ESPN Plus every month, it's still cheaper. So even if you're just a basketball fan and you're just paying to watch the NBA, like you're coming out pretty decently. So I don't know. I think people will get used to it. But this got me thinking, we've talked about it a little bit as the negotiations have gone along, but what do you want out of this opportunity? We probably flush ESPN's broadcast down the toilet. They don't seem to care about it. We shouldn't either. But
I mean, the one of the people I most liked hearing on their broadcast now was like the head coach of an NBA team. So it's like he
was shepherded along probably a little too quickly, if we're all being honest. He was very raw.
Yeah,
JJ.
Yeah,
Redick.
but we're gonna get like they're not gonna bring back Van Gundy's coaching. Like I would have just said,
give me that then first before we jump to the other places. Who do you want to replace Redick? They've said that they're not married to a 3-man booth, so it doesn't have to be anybody. And it doesn't sound like they're for sure on Doris Burke. If you want to be the guy to fire her, you can be my guest.
I'm not. I'm a Doris Burke believer and fan.
So they could go outside the network. They could promote from within. They could get creative. Like that's probably order of business number one is just who replaces Redick and what do they do? I mean, really, we're still talking about replacing Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. But what would your like A1 be there?
It's Breen, it's Doris, and then if I had to do a third, if I'm thinking about like who I like hearing on games, I like Richard Jefferson. I think he does a really good job.
A homer.
He's good. He's funny. He's like engaged.
All the Cleveland fans love him, and it's like, yeah, no shit.
Okay, but like, there's no one like I don't want Kendrick Perkins calling a finals game. Like, there's like
no. I mean, ESPN's like the
bench is not deep.
Bench. Yeah, it's just young, right? Like they've really kind of overhauled their NBA team lately to a point where nobody's ready, I guess, is like the best way I would put it. I don't feel like when I watch the guys that they have now that I'm like, oh yeah, lock in for so-and-so. I like Richard Jefferson. I'm not trying to sit here and tell you he's terrible. I loved him on Yes. I think he does a good job on ESPN, but do I want him calling the finals? Like,
but I don't.
what?
But I don't think there's like a great other answer. I think the other thing that I'm curious about during all of this is like, who are these other networks going to hire? Like, are they just going to go take the TNT people and bring them? Is one of them going to just like Amazon's going to throw all the money in the world to bring them over? I would also suspect, based on what they did with Thursday Night Football, Brendan, that like they're probably going to do some kind of show like that. It won't look exactly the same because football is a little bit different. But like, are we gonna get like KG and Paul Pierce on like a panel with two other guys and like in that kind of thing?
Well, from Amazon's standpoint, I think it's cool because they've gotten a lot of credit from the NFL side. Like they kind of let their studio show breathe a little bit, and they've hired some. I mean, they got Tony Gonzalez, who's pretty normal, and Carissa Thompson, who are like traditional picks, people who have done that job before. But they also have what's the bearded quarterbacks dude? They have
Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic.
Yeah, and they've kind of
Richard Sherman.
They've gone outside the box, right? And they let those guys. It's not so stuffy, and that's good. So I have some optimism about Amazon. NBC, I kind of have no idea, right? Like it was the Bob Costas show back in the day. Is that type of guy that there's no 2024 Bob Costas, right? So it's going to be different.
That energy is also so out of line with what I think makes the NBA exciting. Like that doesn't reflect like what I want out of a modern NBA show. And I don't know. We're not going to get Barkley. He's retiring.
Well,
I know that's like a
negotiation.
Brian, I've read the Brian Curtis column. It's very good. I wonder if at some point he does just like actually retire and goes to golf or whatever. But I think like there's blank slates on both of these, and I wonder who they pull in that are players doing content. If
Costas is not what you want, what do you want out of if it's a blank slate and it's not like, let's not treat it as just like the Chris Manning taste machine, but like,
my taste is awful.
To be a little bit more in with what you think, kind of how the modern NBA fan consumes stuff and what could grow the sport the best and what's going to be most entertaining and informative and all the things that would make it great. Like, what does that even look like to you? Does it look like Inside the NBA?
No, I mean my thing with the NBA is that like it took me a little bit to like when I had this I would say frankly kind of snooty thing where like I was among the crowd that was like, I want you to tell me what's going on. That doesn't really make that good television all the time. It has to be very well done for you to pull some of that off. I want some of that, like, breathe, let it breathe, have some fun with it, teach me something, and have smart former players and analysts and hosts on there, like, have people who know the game and care about the game on there. But I don't need it to be stuffy where, like, I'm watching someone, like, a diagram of play on television. Like, that is not what anyone actually wants. If we really get, I think, if you think you want that, then, like, I think you're wrong. I think it's, like, someone's gonna. It's hard to like recreate it because his show is such a cult of personality. But I wonder if one of these networks are gonna try to have like a McAfee NBA kind of thing, like that kind of energy.
They should.
And I don't even know what. But I don't know who. But the thing with McAfee is that like that is a creation organically of McAfee and his buds and his like zealous interest in the NFL and in WWE, and he got into the Fever this year and like all the random bits they have. That took time to like really develop from the ground up. I don't know, like, the answer to that would have been, like, frankly, like, it would have been just, like, Amazon giving the old man and giving 442, like, $1 billion for them to do, like, 3 hours of content a day. Like, there's not really
Gilbert Arenas
is
trying his version, but he's a gigantic hater and troll who I'm not sure what he even wants in this whole space here, so he's not the answer there.
Yeah, and even, like, Pierce and KG, I like the clips I see, but Paul Pierce seems like he's leaned into, like, what got him fired at ESPN and has sunglasses on. Like, that will not exactly work, like, one-to-one on.
That's kind of the energy of, like, the all the smoke dudes, though. They're kind of, like, fuck the man type energy.
Well, is that the one where, like, we get some of that, like, a slightly dialed back version, you get Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes. Like, is that what you get? It's going to be something, like, we're going to get something, I think, a little bit more unorthodox. So,
well, what I'm excited about
more than NBC.
Yeah, but both, right? I mean, because of Peacock and everything else, like what I'm excited about too, though, beyond, I think we would be a little bit misguided to think like somebody's going to come and transform NBA coverage. But
No.
maybe there's a slightly younger direction, a slightly less stuffy direction that they can go with that, nobody's going to reinvent inside the NBA, but, there's plenty of entertaining people out there that I think, whether it's in the digital space or already on TV, who would do a great job and be just as good, especially if they had more time to actually talk than ESPN gives them, and on and on and on. But there's also an opportunity to actually have like a great NBA show on streaming, right? Or, a couple of new podcasts. Like, there's just going to be more money out there for this stuff because two new places are spending billions of dollars a year to pay to air the games, and you don't just leave it there, right? So that's kind of what I'm invigorated by, because, like, with all due respect, there's smart people everywhere, but like, NBA Today is boring. It's just another ESPN show. It's not that. It's just going to be an opportunity for more good content about basketball at the end of the day. And I think that's exciting regardless of who it is. But along the same lines, who is your favorite game analyst? Who is like the person, the color commentary person in the NBA world who you think, even if you could pick like Van Gundy or Mark Jackson if you wanted to, or you could go local if you think somebody's awesome. But like, what's the epitome of like what that role should be? Because you're probably gonna get at least 4 people hired into new roles between the two places with their number 1 and their number 2 teams.
I've always loved Hubie. Like, I've always loved Hubie.
All right.
He just loves the game and is just genuinely excited about it and explains things very frankly. I've always been a Hubie guy.
Mm-hmm.
I like Doris a lot. I think Doris's ability to tell stories and tell you, like, and after actually having like conversations and present that information, I think is really strong. I'm trying to think if there's like a local person that I would be worth, that like pops into my head is like someone that's like worth like strapping a rocket to their back.
I think the more that I watch and think about it, I honestly feel like coaches are the best game analysts at the NBA level. Not always.
Do you like Stan Van Gundy?
I love Stan Van Gundy.
I agree. I
think he can sometimes hold grudges, like he hates Joel Embiid, and it just is glaringly obvious every time that he broadcasts Embiid's games that he does not like him. And I totally get Philadelphia fans being angry that he acts like that.
Which is bizarre.
It's weird, for sure. But like Doc Rivers, I thought was awesome. Steve Kerr was great once upon a time. Obviously, JJ Redick is, now we can say, I mean, he's kind of both, but like was very much coming at things from a coach's mind, and that really translated well. I think a lot of people like. So coaches, I think, tend to be the best. Recently, at least. I like Jamal Crawford, though. Shout out to him. He's a newcomer.
He's very good.
Who I think could be pretty good. I did an article when Amazon was first getting in the mix, and it became clear that they were probably going to be getting some rights. And I shouted out some of the local people. I think Brian Scalabrine does a good job. I feel like, I don't know. I like Stacey King. He's probably not going to get, why don't we just move on? Why don't you just...
Yeah,
we can just try to end the podcast as soon as possible because I don't have another solution.
Yeah. I'll give you a couple other names. We'll come back. Dylan, I'll put this in the notes. Let me give you a couple. Like, I agree with you on the coaches thing. I think Stan would be good. I think like towards play-by-play guys, like I would be curious to see if like Ryan Ruocco gets a bump from one of these networks. He does. I always like him calling WNBA games and some of the lower NBA games. If someone want to throw the bag at him and elevate him to be one of the league guys, one of the other networks, I think that would be a well-earned kind of step up for him. As far as like analysts in the local markets, one guy I really like, and this is somewhat biased. I've gotten a chance to talk to him before and had him on Locked On Cavs when he was doing stuff with Locked On. But I always liked Antonio Daniels. I always thought he does a really good job on TV.
Absolutely,
like
that's my favorite local broadcast in the league is the Pelicans.
Yeah, it's that one. I was like that one. I'm a fan of the Wolves one as well. And I like the Hornets quite a bit. I think Del Curry does good, but Eric Collins just absolutely cooks. Like he absolutely just cooks on that broadcast. So I think those are ones. And I hear you on this. The Bulls are one. We had some issues, but you mentioned Stacey King. It's like I think there's ways they could go here. Curious to see if like Ian Eagle gets like a massive check to just be like the lead guy for one of these networks as well. His son involved as like there's going to be something where like there's names we're already familiar with that I think get big.
Amazon reportedly wants Ian Eagle because they see him as a replacement for Al Michaels on Thursday Night Football as well. That's the rumor out there.
Would totally get that, and I think it would make a ton of sense. And I like Ian Eagle quite a bit. I think it was curious to see where we go, and I'm curious to see how some of this goes. I mean, even she does. I'm sure her role has shifted since she left the CAF stuff, but it's like I've always and she does more play-by-play in color now. But I've always heard like the Angel Grand broadcast if they needed to like bring a woman. Like I think there's ways you could go where there's talent out there you can find it and elevate certain people on some of these other broadcasts. There's a lot of games to fill. There's going to be like a lot of dates to fill. ESPN is dialing back a little bit. That's creating opportunities for other places. I think how these teams approach it is going to how these businesses approach it will be really key. I'm curious to see like what former players they tap on some of this stuff. If we do see any inside the NBA DNA carried over, it doesn't feel like Ernie Johnson would be the one. I feel like it would be one or two of those guys that go somewhere else. Shaq loves making money, so I wouldn't be surprised if Shaq is working for Amazon in 12 months.
He also stopped doing his This is very inside baseball, but he stopped doing his podcast with TNT with Turner a little while ago. So that's a sign that he's not married to that show or that network or whatever, maybe as much as the other people. I think Shaq's very good at TV. I know people tend to hate, but I think he's gotten a lot better.
I just think we're gonna get Shaq. They're gonna like have like icy hot ads that you can order on Amazon in addition to like Shaq. Shaq on Amazon just makes like all the sense in the world from like a synergy standpoint, and the fact that I said the word synergy is gross. But look, I think on top of this, there's so much money. This obviously exceeded expectations. The league did really well here, and what this shakes out like when we learn about this next year is it's in terms of how we consume the sport. Because Brendan, on top of it, Amazon will not. There's one last question on this. Amazon will not. We did not see this in the NFL where they then developed creating content. They did not go into the content, written content, like that kind of business in the way that ESPN has like its whole staff of NBA writers and stuff. I'm curious to see if NBC does like kind of develop a more digital. They have a small one now, but I'm curious to see if they develop their basketball like media brand in a significant way on top of this as well, and like try to poach, some of the ESPN people and bring them over and have them be like a face. People with TV experience. I mean, there's a lot of people over there with TV.
Well, if you look at what
probably have hit their cap.
The NFL, what Peacock did with the NFL, like Matthew Berry's there, does a daily fantasy show. They've invested in more, written content. Obviously, like Pro Football Talk and Mike Florio he's a brand and business unto himself. So, yeah, I think there will be a lot of that. And Amazon did have a very short-lived, like daily live sports studio content offering that I think failed miserably. Because did you know they did it? That's probably a great indication of why it failed. So there we go, right? But maybe they'll try that again and everything else. And look, even around Thursday Night Football, Amazon, they have Dude Perfect does an alternate broadcast. They did stuff with the Bronze Company. They've done stuff with Dave Chang. They have Taylor Rooks do the long-form interviews. She's ready-made to just do that for the NBA broadcast. So
she's going to get...
They didn't add a lot in the way of... they don't have like AmazonSports.com where you can go read a feature on, Joe Burrow, but they really blew out the Thursday Night Football total package, and I would expect they'll do the same for the NBA. So interviews, little mini segments on the city that the game is in that night, and obviously the regular pre, post, and halftime stuff. So, yeah, I guess the only last thing to mention from an NBA big picture standpoint on this is the cap's going to go up 10% every year for the foreseeable future. So just keep that in mind as these contracts are getting signed, that the money's just going to keep going crazy. Jason Tatum's going to be the highest paid guy for exactly 1 year, and then that will not be a factoid anymore.
Yeah. All right, Brennan, last thing today, Team USA, Canada, basketball is... Did you like my aggressive salute? I don't know if I liked it, but I want to give you a couple thoughts, and you can tell me what you want to talk about. I have three big things coming out of this game. Okay, number one, you can definitely feel that this team is coming together in real time. I maybe feel this more starkly watching the end of the Euros and Copa America at the same time, where like these international programs are these long developing, gestating things. That is not the case here. I think you can, particularly on offense, you felt that they were like learning the set still, learning how to play with each other, all of that and more. I think getting Durant back and healthy as an easy button for this offense is going to elevate it in a big way, and I expect him to be starting when he does come back. Number two, the starting lineup, obviously, let's say Durant gets in instead of Booker, but it's Curry, Booker, Holiday, LeBron, and Embiid. That starting lineup was interesting to me. Skews a little bit small, but Holiday, I think we're going to see how important he is for this team. And while I think in a vacuum, Jaylen Brown's a better pick. I understand if they wanted like a 1-to-1 backup for what Drew Holiday does and didn't want another Mazar, like wanted something more in the kin. I understand how they ended up with Derek White, who, and people may have forgotten this, it was reported like a month ago that if Kawhi couldn't go, Derek White was going to be the pick. This wasn't like new information to anyone. It just like got finalized when Kawhi actually did have to pull out. So like we could have had this debate like a month ago and not had Jaylen Brown like tweeting at Nike for whatever reason. Number three. And maybe my favorite thing, and this is a sign that I personally have grown and that I've healed as a human. I love LeBron and Curry playing together. It's like awesome to me that we're getting this. I think it's so cool. Their dynamic is, over time, has been one of the coolest things to follow. This is the first time they've played together ever. Never been teammates, obviously. Never been on Team USA at the same time. This is like very good chance the only time we ever get this. This is very possible. This is one of one. We never get this again. And even just the little moments where they're improvising together. Like there's the play in the corner where Curry gives back. LeBron ends up the ball in the corner. LeBron just has an impromptu screen, frees Curry up. Those guys know how to play with each other just instinctually. And I cannot wait to watch the things they do in this tournament. Like that duo to me is going to be my favorite part of watching Team USA this tournament, I think. So any of those stand out to you as notable from that win over Canada?
I think they're all great points. I think the LeBron Curry aspect, it's kind of a cool parallel to Magic and Bird at the Dream Team, where they didn't really get to play together because neither one of them was the best guy and Bird barely played. So it's cool that these two guys are at least still starters, major contributors. They are recognizably themselves still at this point when they get to kind of, have a last hurrah together. I mean, big picture, my takeaway is this team's just fucking awesome. I just really have a hard time imagining that they're not going to win. And it's not even just the center having Embiid that makes me say this, but they're just big and physically overpowering in a way that I'm not used to. I mean, it's easy to say that because they now finally got their center, but with LeBron, with Anthony Davis around now, with Anthony Edwards, frankly, even Tatum, there's just a lot of guys that are just physical forces. And you see, of course, again, most pronounced with the center spot against Canada, where it's like Kelly Olynyk, Dwight Powell, Trey Lyles. It's like, what are we doing here? I know other teams, especially Eastern European teams, will have those big hulking center options like Jokic or anyone else, but top to bottom, outside of maybe Curry, and that might be it. Durant, but even he's a physical force in a different way. Might just be Curry and Halliburton when he's out there. But every other player on the roster, I'm like, oh yeah, they're going to be up to the task physically no matter who they're matching up with. And I'm not used to that, but I think that kind of puts the team over the top just from that first scrimmage of finally seeing them play, where I'm like, yeah, it's just going to be really hard to match up with them in any way, shape, or form.
They're going to be the overwhelming favorites. They got a pretty easy group.
Yeah.
It's cool. I also thought the second unit was better than the starters in this game.
It's just crazy how many of these guys that are superstars in the league are like hustle dudes on this team. Like,
and then it's going to be like January
Edwards
and they're
scrapping.
Like, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, he just went to the conference finals as a number one guy.
Yeah, and then like in 4 months we're going to be like, oh, Ant's like coasting on defense to save some energy, and here it's like, nah, I'm going for every little bit of it, and it's fun to see. Even LeBron like doing like a lot of cutting. He's not
Tatum
just like standing
as like
around
a change of pace option. just led a team to a championship.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's ridiculous.
This this team's loaded. You do, I think, see some elements of what Kerr likes to do as far as motion and cutting and kind of some of that kind of basketball. I think is very clearly in this
and
team.
vets too, right? That's one of the other components of this team. Obviously, the age has been a question mark in terms of, are these guys going to stay healthy? Should they have been here? Did they cut the line? All the narrative talk, but it pays off when you have a coach like Kerr who wants to run stuff, capital S, and you have players who actually buy into that.
Yeah, instead of just high pick and roll ISO. Well, Durant's going to be the one guy who I think definitely is a little bit just jab step, pull up. But I think you do need some of that at a certain point.
And he's obviously played in Kerr's offense before. But it's remember Tokyo when it was they were kind of uneven those first few games, and we were wondering if that would finally be the year because they didn't bring as much talent that time around that they finally lost, and you're trying to see can Zach LaVine execute Greg Popovich's offense and whatnot, and now it's that's not even a question because of course LeBron can execute any offense, as can Durant, and of course Curry plays on his team and on down the line. So
I did love also, because I'm a LeBron mark, I did also love Kerr talking about LeBron's practice habits and him being Ty Lue and Spo said he just does this every day. That guy works his ass off all the time. I'm hell yeah, this is great.
Yeah, this is a better question for Wes, but what did we think of the Jaquez, Bam, Spo, LeBron photo?
Oh, I didn't even see this.
This was the generations of Heat culture. This made the rounds where Spo obviously on the coaching staff, Bam on the regular team, Jaquez on the select team,
and
I
see
LeBron,
this. I see
LeBron just kind of welcoming himself back into the club. I'm not sure that flies a lot of other places, but maybe the Heat Mafia has made amends with the King for his departure.
Well, Pat Riley's not there. Cavs life for Dwayne Wade. Maybe Cavs life for Dwayne Wade had some.
Wade. I mean, Wade went to Cleveland after that, so he can't have a say.
Yeah.
What does Haslam think? What does UD think? That's my question.
Yeah, we'll probably hear on First Take because he was on ESPN on the playoffs. We'll probably hear a take about this at some point. I did also. It was seeing the pre-game videos, Brendan, watching Spo warm up Steph Curry was just I'm this is wild. This is just nuts.
It's crazy too because it's literally also on top of being a stacked team. It is also the two best coaches in the NBA and maybe the three, depending on how you feel about Steve Kerr, also coming along with Spo and Lue. It's just hey, what if all of the best things about the entire NBA just went to Paris together and just completely tore shit up for a month? What would that look like? We're just going to get to watch it.
I also now need version. Maybe we're not going to get this for the same exact thing. Can we take this seriously for the World Cup too? Can we just go for it all the time? I would really like that.
I would be at least happy with more of the best young players going. The problem with the World Cup is not even the best up-and-comers actually go.
That's what I'm saying. We have no pride.
I don't need LeBron at the World Cup. I don't need Steph or KD at the World Cup. But why
Can't get Tatum?
Well, Tatum did it, and he's not really young anymore. But Ant did it. But other than that, I guess John Zion probably not the best, guys to point to right now.
Okay, so here's the roster, the World Cup roster from the 2020. I'm gonna just read the roster and there's some. It's okay. Kerr, Spo, Ty Lue, Mark Few are the coaches. Here's the guys: Paolo, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Ant, Halliburton, Hart, Jaren Jackson, Brandon Ingram, Cam Johnson, Walker Kessler, Bobby Portis, Austin Reeves. Can we, no disrespect to some of those guys, and can we just, do a little better than the Cam Johnson through Austin Reeves spots?
Yeah, exactly. In hindsight, they did break out a little bit this year, but probably would have been nice to have Chet. Probably would have been nice to have Tyrese Maxey, for instance. What are you going to do?
Can we get could we gotten Jalen for this instead of Ingram?
Yeah, well, it's funny because part of me probably thinks Jalen said no to that, and now he's mad that he doesn't get to do this because he actually. Oh well, if you had asked me about that, I would have, but you didn't. So who knows?
I'm just saying, let's try to.
If Jaylen Brown really wanted his DNPs in the Olympics, he can be upset about that. But look, Bam Adebayo and all these other guys are going to get DNPs, so
it's tough. It's tough. let's just win gold and let's see who comes in second. I'm really just wondering who comes in second. Is it? I don't even care. Let's just see how much we can win this by. I will say one last thing. Part of me did kind of wonder if it would have been cool to see Cooper Flag at the last spot just for the sake of it. It wasn't going to happen, but I'm just in.
Do you know how much
I'm just
Caitlin Clark coverage would have erupted if Cooper Flag got a spot at age 17 and Caitlin Clark didn't in her rookie year when Taurasi did, etc. So no, don't think we can do that.
That's fair. No, but next Olympics, World Cup, can we get Cooper
Flag will be on the 2020.
Yeah.
What is it? 7?
5?
2027.
7? So
no, 2025. You're right. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
World Cup.
So starting 5 of Paolo, Cooper Flag, Halliburton, Chet.
Low key, Paolo should be the guy upset. He cursed the country of Italy in order to join our national team, and then didn't get an Olympic spot. He only got to go to the World Cup and get a disappointing result, and now he's back to the feeder system.
Starting, well, Ann will not be playing at the next World Cup at this trajectory.
No,
we're gonna.
But I agree. I agree with your general pick. I think your general take. We should be sending our best and brightest to the World Cup, not Bobby Portis.
Good for Bobby that he got to do it. Let's try to go dominate the world.
Amen.
Let's have some pride. All right, we're going to end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Brendon Kleen. Back at you next week with more of the Just Basketball Show. Have a great weekend, everyone. Hopefully you watch the Euros. You watch Team USA as they go off to the Middle East. Do whatever makes you happy. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you soon.